Okay, hello, Kuna. We are reviewing now April 2nd, 2024, the City Council meeting. So let's go to the first deliberation.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
You want to start?
So at least 85% of the document is a lot of just grammatical and minor changes, which I applaud Doug for the painstaking detail that he's gone through on this. The rest, I still have a similar issue to the last time we talked about this, is if I don't fully understand or fully grasp, I've been taking notes all weekend.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this one actually was kind of a big deal. I don't know how it turned out. So yeah, this is the combination of Title V and Title VI. And there was quite a, no one really was able to follow this.
And on just things that have come across my mind reading.
It's gone back to the Planning and Zoning Commission a lot. And, one of the things that I saw in there, and I don't know if they took it out, was they were giving the Planning and Zoning Commission a little bit more power. Like they could approve things without having it go to the city council, which is a big no-no. I mean, pretty much the Planning and Zoning Committee is, I don't know. I don't know what the purpose is, because at the end of the day, the city council members need to approve things. I guess it's just kind of going through the motions. So, you have city staff that are working on these changes. And anyway, let's hear what they say.
Because it is so big that I do kind of like the idea of maybe we pump the brakes and break this up into smaller sections where there's any changes that don't have to do with minor grammatical changes. Because if I don't fully understand some of these, how do I expect our citizens to?
We're going to apply it to them,
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGregor?
It's a lot, but it's what we directed staff to do, right? We've had 8 public hearings, 1 open house, 1 renotice due to an error in posting, good find Cindy. And, we've rehashed it. Multiple meetings, no one showed up for, whatever, and here we are, and we're trying to get something going. And it seems like every time we get momentum, then we tell staff, stop, never mind, we want to do something different. So, we can always change stuff later, but we've made it this far, and it seems like we get it to a point, and then all of a sudden, we got to change everything again. I don't think it's to the point we need to start and rewrite the book again. We move forward, and if there's something that doesn't work, we change it again. It's that simple. That's just my thought.
I think one of the biggest issues is combining 2 title sections. So there's really no way to bite off a little bit of that at a time and combine the 2 sections. So I think that's the issue here with this, and this is why this one is actually bigger than what we normally do. But just combining those 2 sections requires 2 full sections of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Lorley?
I got a couple of things. Reading the information that was provided to us, to me, reading it has a lot more to do with our process of disseminating information. It doesn't have that much to do with the entity subject matter. So I don't know how to address this other than, it's really, really big that the information is not getting out to the citizens in their opinion. And I also look at it, when we're creating something like this to create a community in a city, we have to be smarter than the fox. And when the developers come in and they have lawyers, they have big departments that chew these things up. And I like the way it's spelled out. There's more content, but I think we need that to defend ourselves for growth. That's just the way I see it. I know we have to protect ourselves, and I know, to me, it's simple enough if a regular citizen comes in and says, I want to do this, you can tell them, well, here's what you have to do. It's a simple communication thing. I don't expect the average citizen to sit down and decipher and read all of this title and try to understand it when it doesn't really pertain to their daily life. We're trying to create a guide that gives us information when developers come in and they want to do X, Y, and Z. Is X, Y, and Z allowed in our title, in our codes? That's the way I look at it. I'll shut up now.
Okay?
I think you guys are kind of
Okay.
You said most of the stuff that I had the opinion on. It's a lot. We've had a lot of time to do it.
I respect all the work you put into this.
Yeah, it's been great. I think a lot of the time seeing where it changes, seeing it on one side where this is what we're doing, this is what we changed, this is why we changed it. That, I think for the future, that would be easier for the community to understand what we're doing.
Yeah, and I don't know if a lot of people understand why we make changes. It's because something was done and it didn't go in our favor to the benefit of the community, so we had to create something for the protection. That's what these are for. I think Doug and his staff did a great job. A lot of, yeah, and it's not just the good job you did. I have to go in and say, all the deflection you were given all the way down for a year to get this done. Thank you.
Let me give some context. I deal with a lot of legal documents with my businesses, and you're going back and forth between lawyers, and the way you have it marked up, you have multiple layers, red, blue, green, and they're going back and forth. And what they do is, here, actually, I can show you right here. I have this. You just go in here and you type review, or you write comments. Sorry, here's comments. And you can put in your comments and it'll show up on the right. You can also do this in Microsoft Word, and you can write justifications, and it shows all of the revisions. And that is the process I expect from my attorneys. And that would be the process I would expect from city staff. But I never saw any of those kinds of documents with sort of explanations of why each little part was removed. And I mean, I guess anyway, they've probably approved it, so let's hear what they say.
Especially from the two on that side of the bench. It was all them then.
You have a motion?
I think Mark's-
Mark, did you have something?
To the extent, Mark Bybee, city attorney, just to the extent, like, to kind of offer some context to the motivation behind why it was presented in such a large document. When you go about editing code, you can't treat any section as a silo, right? It's not like one section of code exists independent of all the others, and it doesn't matter what you do there, it won't impact the others. And what can happen over time, and this exists in code, I'm not going to be able to go on precise examples because the last I reviewed this, it's been over a year ago. That's how long this has been, since we went through the edits. But when you make changes sometimes to just a section, it creates a section that, like, inconsistencies throughout the whole title, if you will, because you didn't change everything, that needed to be changed. And so I can tell you from doing this for multiple cities that sometimes I'm asked for a change, and it's like, well, a good example is actually for the city of Kuna. I was asked to make a change to some animal control ordinances. This has been 4 years ago, probably. And there's one problem that wanted to be fixed, and it created a trickle-down effect. That I remember you having to read the summary of the bill, and or the ordinance, you didn't like it because you're up there reading the long caption because it has this trickle-down effect. And so the idea in presenting it in this way is it's, you're able to address it as a lump sum and go through and catch those changes and make them code-wide and make some consistency. Because if you do look on Municode, which is where your code's maintained online, you'll see years after some individual sections. You have many that are as old as 1977. That was the last time that was actually looked at, that section. You have some as recent as 2023 that it's been looked at. And so you've had like spot changes is kind of how it's been done historically, and over time it grows and, have consistency problems. And so when this started, Jace's last name is Hellman. I'm trying to remember now. Is that right? Jace Hellman, the prior planning director, before Doug was appointed, he started the process. He worked on it with Bill Gigray from my office was the first draft. Another attorney that's not at our office anymore, she's now at the Attorney General's office. She helped midway through in review. Her name's Andrea Nelson, in doing a lot of the reviews and edits. Then ultimately, I was the final reviewer and editor from our office. I think our office probably has between 120 and 150 hours in review time into this document. So it wasn't just done, off the cuff and without thought. The problem is it's taken now so long since our review to get to here. It's been at least a year since I've looked at it, right? It's taken that long to get through the process. And so that's some of the methodology, some of the background. Code edits are difficult. They just are. But the idea here in bringing it together is let's try and actually make something that works cohesively. Now, I'd love to say we nailed it perfectly, but I guarantee at some point we're going to find something that said, wish we would have done that different, and we'll do those, work those out. But that's the nature of state legislation too. It happens. They adopt something that it starts to get applied, and you're like, okay, now we see in that circumstance that section needs a little work, but we try to kind of create a whole system here in bringing this way. So I don't know to the extent that offers any clarification. I just wanted to give some background on how we got here and why it was approached in the manner it was.
I think the biggest issue for me was just making sure that we continue to have the public hearings here, which we addressed. The lot splits for people who want to develop their land in smaller, not the big developers who come in, like you say, who mull through it, but also the average Joe who has a couple of acres who wants to develop. It was important to make sure that they have protections as well. So that's all I have to say. I'll entertain a motion if you guys have one.
far as a recommendation
Yeah.
for motion, it'd be to approve the language changes. This is not proposed in an ordinance format. I think it'd still need to come, for a later ordinance reading and put into ordinance format to be formally adopted. It doesn't even have an ordinance number assigned yet, so.
So we'll approve all the updates and then it'll come back to you for review.
Yeah, it'd come in to basically to make it look like an ordinance.
To take the red lines out and.
Yeah, put it, because the way it would be, I'd write in the ordinances, sometimes you have ordinance changes that are just like, if it's a, paragraph, you're striking out this language, adding in this. This one would be repealing titles 5 and 6 and replacing it with this new title, is how it would be proposed, and so you'd have all the new language. But right now, it's just not formatted like an ordinance, so it'd be approving the language changes with Doug's additional proposals if you're gonna do that, but then we'd actually need to come with the ordinance later.
And then we'll see that before it comes back to you.
Yes, it would be the language that's been approved. It's not a chance for us to go and make a whole new thing. That's not what's happening.
No, I just want, so that we can read it to make sure.
Yeah, yes.
And I'm not saying I oppose this in principle by any means. I mean, this is
Oh,
great
it's-
work. It's the whys on some of
Yeah.
them. Is there something, what's driving it from someplace else, state code, that sort of thing. In the track changes, that's why I'd asked if there were comments on board the whys between.
Oh, I think it was something that would be helpful. I mean, we've read it for a year.
And I'm not an expert
Yeah.
by any means, but those whys would be helpful for me, I guess, in that regard.
Well, and like Mark said, we're gonna find something that we go, why'd we do that? And we make the change. But for now, this is what seems to be what needs to happen to work, to control and to clarify things. That's my opinion.
One of the things I look at is this document is, I'm going to use the word dynamic. It's ever changing. Things have changed in our society and in our community since the first Title V was created. And now we have this new one, and I'm going to stick my foot out there and say, this probably won't be the last change we see in the next 50 years, because it's a growing document. Everything gets added.
Sorry, Mark Bybee, City
Yeah, go
Attorney
ahead.
again. To that point, Councilman Laraway, so I said the year 1977. I pointed that out because LUPA, the Local Land Use and Planning Act, was adopted in Idaho. It's either in the 60s or 70s. I can't remember precisely. And so then across the state, there is this rush by all local jurisdictions we have to get our zoning ordinances, we have to get our subdivision ordinances adopted, right? That was basically the authority was granted by the state saying, cities, counties, you're in charge of planning and your boundaries. Now adopt your ordinances. And so then everybody was rushing to do it. And so when you see something from the 70s, that time period, it's an indication to me as an attorney when I see it, that was very likely the first stab at one of these ordinances by the city. Right. And it's in a time where everybody's kind of adopting them, and so they're looking at, okay, we have a few cities, bigger cities, like the bigger cities are the fastest usually to adopt it. Let's look at what they did, and they're kind of, copycat methods, and then starting to figure it out. And so now, 1977, is that, anybody tell me how long exactly that was ago? 50-ish years? Are we just short of 50? Are we just short of 50? Is that right?
I graduated that year, so.
There we go.
Just stop right now.
When's your 50th high school reunion? So there's a lot that is learned in the land use development process in that time, and I think we're trying to capture a lot of the lessons learned, if you will, and update.
One thing I just saw was time extension. So it looks like the first time extension of an approved project can be done by the director specifically. And then it looks like the second, if they have another one that they want to do, they'll have to go through the city council. So they separated out time extensions.
In the code. I will also offer, I know there's concerns that this is tailored to the developers. I can tell you, as somebody who was heavily involved in the drafting changes, I didn't coordinate with developers on this. That wasn't who I was talking to. I was talking to your planning director. That's who I worked with.
Okay, so we have two changes that we're talking about, is that correct? So we're gonna make a motion to make those two changes and then bring it back to council for final approval? Is that what the motion needs to be?
For the coverage.
A motion to approve the language, and then we would bring back forward on an agenda the ordinance with an effective date to codify the changes. I don't think that necessarily needs to be in a public hearing, but this
Okay.
same language, as approved this evening, if approved, will be back before you as the effective ordinance with an effective date. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I do agree with John, though, about disseminating information. With being a year, and some folks are just,
We can all do better at that.
yeah. You guys have a motion?
I would move we approve the language changes for ordinance amendment 23-01-OA and the director's recommendations. So that would be in there as well.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so one thing that I'm just looking at it as they were talking is the lot split. The main thing that I was looking at in the title is the changes of the decision-making body. And so when you see this added line here, I'm going to have to zoom it in maybe a little bit more. You see that the lot split has been added, and now there's no recommended body, and the director can do it. So that's basically an administrative approval. You don't have to go through a public hearing process. before, I think, yeah, there were things where it was like the final decision-making body was the PZ, but you see here it's either going to be, or it was changed from the city council to the PZ, but it looks like they eliminated that. So here, so this will be interesting with this lot split. I believe it was Councilman Bruce mentioned that that was going to be helping a bunch of people. In Ada County and Canyon County, they do allow administrative parcel splits and boundary adjustments, but they set it like if the property or the lines were not adjusted prior to like the 1978. I'm just throwing out. I think sometime in the 1970s, if the parcels were not adjusted, then you could just do it administratively. Whoa. Sorry about that. I gotta mute that. So anyway, looks like it got approved, and they're saying it was a year-long process. This is brutal. I mean that, yeah. So interesting. You could do 5. I might need to take a little bit look at this. This is similar with Ada County. They did do an ordinance change regarding additional dwelling units that ended up affecting me directly. But I don't live within the city boundaries itself, so I guess somebody else can take a look at it. But yeah, I think you might be interested in checking out the potential lot splits that might be able to apply to you if you have a larger lot and might benefit you. All right, that's about it. Have a good one. Bye bye.